to it.
Anybody have any questions before I keep going?
Yeah, I do have one.
Okay.
First of all, I completely agree with what you were talking about. Mexico, I guess, in Brazil is pretty similar. We have a lot of Catholic background, and then it even got mixed with like the natives like creeds, and then the African creeds, and it got all messed up and like mashed into something that then it makes it pretty open, let's say, for people. So even if they're a hardcore, Christian or whatever, they still know about certain stuff that maybe in Italy, for example, I don't see people, not that they wouldn't know, but maybe they wouldn't talk about it. They would be like super scared. In Brazil, it's like, oh yeah, there's those guys that they do their own thing, but and then there's the differences. So that was really nice. But what I wanted to ask is, you mentioned Jodorowsky. So how do you personally approach the tarot? Like for you, is it more of a psychological thing, or do you also use it like magically? How do you go about using it? Because there are obviously like infinite ways of doing so. I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question, because I think I'm a little bit of a I go into the, and I forget the name of the of the animal right now, but I like to like go into like the whole like dumpster that is like popular culture and spirituality, and there's a lot of things going on there, and I dive in and I just find like the tastiest, most nourishing stuff that I can find. And one of them was Jodorowsky's approach to tarot. I don't adhere to it strictly, because I take some ideas that I think that the most interesting and I don't want to say productive, but the most enriching way that he has of approaching the messages of the tarot cards are those connected to metagenealogy, which gave way to constellations. So I really like that he takes these archetypes and immediately connects it with like the history of not only of the individual that is sitting across from him, for whom he's reading the cards, but they go way back, not just on their lives, but also the lives of their families. So I find that extremely interesting, and I think that it yields a lot of very fruitful insights during the sessions. Like, to be really careful about not using it as a psychoanalytical tool. It's an interesting exercise, but the way that I see it, when you cross that line while you're in reading for a client, or even for yourself, not so much. That's safest, I guess. But when you assume that role in front of the querent, you are like risking portraying the tarot as a therapeutic tool, which, even though it can and it has served people in that sense for many centuries, but if you formally do it like that, it can have other repercussions that are that can create confusion as far as your role as a reader, and also you cannot diagnose some issues, mental or emotional, on the querent through the tarot. I think that there's a very like blurry line there that we need to be mindful of. Not fearful, but just know what our place is in that dynamic. So yeah, I mean that's the element that I rescue the most from Jodorowsky's approach. I think that how genealogical spiritual issues can be traced down through the cards. So that is kind of like the bit of Jodorowsky that I take for tarot.
Thank you.
Super interesting.
I do. There's an issue right now with your video, but your audio is fine. Whatever. I'm still fine with doing it like this. I just want to let you know it's totally black. We can't see you anymore, but your audio is fine. So.
I can't hear
if you don't...
Nick.
Oh yeah, you can't hear me now either. Shit. Oops. Um, I don't know. You might have to maybe try to come back and come back in. Jen, real quick, would you
I
want to
think there's
introduce?
some audio issues here.
Oh, and Headless is muted too.
Yeah, you just tell her in private chat. I think she might be looking. Can you hear me?
Let me try my headphones and see if I can hear.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Might have to leave.
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
Guess not. Oh no.
Private chat.
Yeah, I don't even know if she knows.
I can't hear any of you guys right now. I don't know why.
Can you text her?
I could email her, but I mean, the odds of her checking that.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello? Hello.
It's trying to figure out whether it's mobile or not.
Seems like it's a phone from the portrait mode.
Yeah, I just messaged her to ask her if she could leave and come back.
Oh.
She's still there. She'll probably come back, hopefully. Oh, Jen, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Sorry about that.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. So I'm really excited to be on with you, all of you guys. Obviously, Judith, Nick, Boss, Mr. 93, HG. We even brought you up in the space last night. Arrows came in a positive and very positive. So I'm looking forward to the generative ability of the ear of the fire horse, and of course my brother Matt Murrah, who just spent like 3 hours speaking with me. So everybody knows where to check me out. Thanks, Nick, for having me on, and I apologize, Cherry, for being a little late. I'm really interested in the left-hand path sort of perspective, not necessarily the practical action, but the conceptual ones at least. So I appreciate Jodo's tarot as well, his sort of, because I think his tarot's very deeply connected to his film work as well, and maybe even his comic book work. So I think that there's a way to sort of marry the imagery and the symbolism of those two things with his perspective on tarot. So thank you so much.
Hi, sorry guys, I'm back. I just wasn't able to listen to hear any of you guys, so I had to log off and back in.
Yeah, at some point while you were talking, even your video went out, but I was like, the audio's fine. I don't care as long as we can hear you, and then you couldn't hear us, so it was totally messed up. But yeah, and then I'm gonna give Headless Giant real quick. Headless, let everybody know what's up with you.
Headless Giant, you can find me on Twitter and on YouTube and also on Instagram. So check those out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Cherry, I'm just gonna take a shot at it, and I would assume you don't attribute tarot to the Kabbalah. I'm pretty sure. Are you even interested in Kabbalah at all, or no?
I am, but to be quite honest, I don't think that. I think we've become a little obsessed about, extrapolating every system and trying to apply it at all times within any given practice. And I mean, everyone is free to do as they will. But personally, I find that when you're reading for a querent, I don't think it's necessarily, unless the querent specifically asks you, do you read tarot in this way, because I'm interested on it from a Kabbalistic perspective about how it can help me on my journey towards reaching my highest level or getting unstuck of this other level. Unless the querent specifically asks for that, I don't think it's an element that you need to add to your practice, as a tarot reader. It can be fruitful if you approach it from a shadow work perspective, on a personal level. If you are reading cards for yourself and creating that system of that evolutionary map for yourself, then I can absolutely see that there will be a purpose and an interesting use of that. But otherwise, I mean, I do find that I'm interested in Kabbalah, but I am barely, like, even after like several years of like trying to like really get in and incorporate it into kind of like my daily philosophy, I am nowhere near like a place where I can feel like I'm capable of applying it on readings without turning it into like this whole ordeal. So I don't know. I think that the cards are a way to, in a way that in a way they are a shortcut for the understanding of so many of these messages. They are very condensed and kind of like brought down to a visual that we can digest in a simpler way than you say the tree of life, because I see a lot of people on social media trying to do this like video essays or explanations about the tree of life in like 1 minute, and it's I appreciate the effort, but it's like,
Nice try.
yeah.
Um, I guess before we go more forward with the tarot and the book, I guess maybe now we'll try to get into a little bit of when it comes to the left-hand path. What does that mean for you?
uh the left hand path is, for me, it's a path of the outsider. um it's not so much, I mentioned the term binary uh, early on our discussion. um I think that the left hand path is everything that strays away from that binary, like good and evil, light versus dark, black versus white, male versus female. And I think that the left hand path is just like a completely different and perhaps more scenic and uh, insightful route uh, for any practice or any like personal life philosophy that allows you to work on yourself, so that, not to heal yourself, because one of the things that I have found in the left hand path, and that I think I've also heard a lot of other practitioners say, is that we can never like aspire to be fully healed and perfect and enlightened. I mean, I know I am deeply flawed, but so what? I mean, what can I do with that? Given these cards that were handed to me, what can you do with that? And it's really not a way of, presenting yourself to the world, but it's kind of like being very aware of your fallibility and your shortcomings and everything that makes you like weird and gnarly and different, separate and like an individual and a freak if you want, even. Uh, but you learn to, on the left hand path, to walk through life, um, using all of these things that are usually framed in other practices or in other traditions as shortcomings or things you need to fix or levels you need to like escalate and leave uh, what is earthly behind because it's reprehensible or shameful. um, the left hand path for me is like the opposite, is rejoicing on those differences, on those shortcomings, on those like weird things that are usually cause you shame. uh, you're like, okay, I know this is there, I acknowledge it, I accept it, I'm going to try to use it for my advantage and use it to live a life that is richer for me and that in turn creates something that is like more fruitful and that brings motion forward in all of the communities I am a part of. That for me, that is the left hand path. And perhaps on certain measure, it's also, the solitary path versus, the one that you have within covens or traditions that are like more sanctioned. There is a strong sense of um, anarchy and maybe also chaos on the left hand path that is feared or shunned or judged from a different perspective that tends to be more negative in other practices. In the left hand path, it's like a given, and it's like we're not looking to like create perfect systems. We're looking to just understand ourselves and accept ourselves and ultimately love ourselves with all of our like horrible or wonderful flaws, you know.
One thing I did want to ask, and I think it's just more for the listeners for them to get an understanding of like the left hand path, and maybe certain things that just aren't too correct. I would assume, like, sometimes when people join orders, they may have their own like specific beliefs or certain things that you may have to adhere to. So, but besides an order, as a solo practitioner, if when you say left hand path, does that automatically mean you all of a sudden adhere to worshiping certain gods and take on certain specific ideologies?
I don't think so, because there are a great deal of beliefs and tradition, deities, spirits, entities, and a bunch of things that could be categorized within the left-hand path.
Oh shit, we lost her again.
Could,
Oh,
you
you hear
know,
oh no, we lost you again, Cherry. What happened?
yeah. I'm going to like log out and back in because the audio got a little bit weird. I'll come back.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the reason I kind of asked that question for the listeners is sometimes I think that and again, I'm not trying to like promote the practice. I would not consider myself a left-hand path practitioner, but not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just I do think sometimes some people when they hear that they automatically assume like this demon worship. Or that's when the dick and demons comes out. Everything's dick and demons now. Left-hand path. So I just
So
kind of wanted to
funny.
bring up that there isn't like all of a sudden when you adhere to that all of a sudden means like Satan's your dude, or Baal or Moloch is your guy now. Like no, that you still have to make that choice to choose that deity. Like you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. But even if you chose that, like most guys talking that, they don't even know what those mean. Like what, that's the bigger problem even.
Yeah, they know the version Jordan Maxwell told them like 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, Cherry, I was just saying the reason I asked that is because I do think sometimes people tend to think that there's negative connotations to say left-hand path. It automatically means you like worship something like horrible or demonic.
I mean, and I want to say because I think it's important to clarify that there is space for every practice, and people can decide to like worship and carry out the rituals that they have learned and been fed, or that they create in order to have the goal that they are seeking fulfilled. And so I am not by any means saying that there are things that are forbidden, because that would be antithetical to the left hand path. I think that the world is like, we don't even imagine or can't even comprehend how many traditions and how many practices and beliefs and deities and entities and such exist or have existed throughout our history. So there is a space for that, in the left hand path. But yeah, it doesn't automatically mean if someone is on the left hand path, it's not synonymous with Satanism, with theistic Satanism, or with what in the West most still refer to as black magic, which I hate that term, by the way, and so many other things, that is like a huge pet peeve of mine. So I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person performs certain rituals or worships certain types of deities or works with some spirits, but it can be, it's a case by case basis, just the same as if not every person that is Catholic may be homophobic, but there's a chance that there's a lot of them, So it's the same in the left-hand path, I guess, for a bunch of beliefs and traditions, many of which have existed like for thousands of years. So yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Did anybody want to ask her any questions or anything before I go on? Jen or Matt? No. Judy, you got anything?
What's your
Jin
favorite
had one
tarot deck?
before. No, sorry. Just that Jin had one in the chat. I don't know if you want to ask that again.
Well, I mean, Cherry, you sort of addressed it, but I'm just going to ask what I initially sparked sort of my interest was that I wanted to ask you about of your familiarity with La Santa Muerte, Muertismo broadly, or the Veracruziano style of Santinismo, sort of like that syncretic tradition that occurs on the coast. I'm sure you're more familiar with it than me, but yeah.
Well, the cults that are in Veracruz, they have been there for a while. And in Mexico, the city of Catemaco specifically is very well known. Catemaco is in Veracruz. It's widely known to be like the place where people go to seek really powerful brujos, to perform certain types of, spiritual works. It exists and people turn to it sometimes. And there are witches, there are these brujos who do that type of work. I would say that a handful of them are legit and the rest kind of like coast through the thing just for profit, thanks to the reputation that has been built in the area by these other practitioners. And it's a personal choice whether or not people turn to that type of magic to attain results. I can completely understand it on some circumstances, but I am not like personally acquainted or familiar with anyone who like performs or follows that tradition. It would be something interesting by all means, but it just hasn't happened so far. But it does exist, and it's not something that I find morally reprehensible, because I think that everyone is responsible of their own choices. The witches that do that type of work, it is their life path to perform it. And they know what they're dealing with and they know what's at stake. And if they get results, it's clearly because they're doing things, the way that they should be doing them. And those who like turn to them, it's like also, people think that it's very easy to perform like any type of like spiritual magical work to attain some results involving sometimes other persons and things like that. But before that, you have to, decide, okay, am I ready to like go take this additional step or not? What does it imply for me? It's kind of like a very, there's a lot of like discussion to be had there about like self-agency and just, dealing with consequences, good or bad. And, everything in life is mostly transactional anyway. And Santa Muerte, yes, of course, that's much closer to home. I am not like practitioner or devotee of the cult of Santa Muerte, but she's very near and dear to my heart. I was born in Mexico City, and the cult was actually born in Mexico City in the barrio of Tepito. So I think that some of the believers in Santa Muerte are some of the most genuine people that you will be able to ever find. And I know that Santa Muerte really delivers, but she doesn't like kind of like bestow her gifts upon just anyone, but she is a very esteemed and I would say loved deity for anyone who is on like what we would say is like the other or even the wrong side of the tracks, So I think that during these times that we're living, particularly, it doesn't surprise me that the cult of Santa Muerte has experienced such an exponential growth, and that a lot of foreigners are like kind of like paying attention to it even now, because I think it's very representative of this time that we are living in history. Death is like transformation, and death is also life. It's not like the opposite. It's one and the same. So yeah, I mean, Santa Muerte I could talk about for hours, but yeah, I'm close to it, and it's closer to my heart, as you can tell.
Thank you so much, Cherry. And I have a quick follow-up. You don't have to answer in any particular way, but
Yeah.
there is some controversy, or there was, among
Mhm.
like more Western or Northern, we'll call them practitioners,
Mhm.
between like the Siete Colores system, like the 7 color robes, versus like the Azteca robe. And so a lot of people who have indigenous ancestry in like the northern part of America, they
Mhm.
actually prefer the Azteca robe for very obvious reasons. And
Mhm.
but a lot of more people who consider themselves traditional actually
Mhm.
prefer the 7 robe, or even just the tricolaris system, the
Mhm.
red, black, and white. So I
Mhm.
wondered if you had any if you wanted to weigh into that debate, or you had any preference or any insight into that.
I think
Thank
that
you.
is ultimately, oh, you're welcome. I think that is a very personal choice, and one that is driven entirely not only by like inheritance and like where your roots are, but also what is calling you to a practice. I think that it would be hypocritical of me to defend like the Aztec like original approach to it, because what we now know about these beliefs, these indigenous beliefs in Mexico, is very, it's been sieved through by the colonial perspective. We had the Spanish here for like centuries doing that, and Catholicism also intertwined with that. So now many things that someone would witness and see as, oh, this is very autochthonous and very like attached to like true Aztec practices and things like that. There's no way to know, and most of it is that if you come to Mexico, it's done for tourists anyway. So I think that ultimately uh, the answer would lie on whether or not it's authentic, or it feels authentic for the person that is practicing that, because it's very easy to like talk and try to dictate whether something is canon or not according to the Aztecs, or according to this other ethnic group here or there. But it's ultimately about like what your source is, what your reason for doing that is. And I think that matters a lot more ultimately, because right now it's impossible, like, even for me, I have very most likely indigenous ancestors way back, but it's so mixed now with like Spanish influence and even French influence. And right now, influence from the US. So it becomes kind of a futile exercise to try to de- decide which one would be like the most authentic, because it's one of the great and the coolest things about history, but also I guess it kind of sucks from a different perspective. Like the further things go by, and the more years go by, it gets more difficult to kind of like decide on whether something is legit or not, as far as this type of practices. So I don't know if I somehow answered your questions, or if I babbled a lot. I'm sorry.
Well, the
Mm,
question of authenticity usually comes down to, does it work or not? And I think a
Mhm,
lot of people
mhm,
miss that. Is it
mhm,
working, or
mhm.
is it?
Yeah, exactly. And usually the easy answer is like, if it's not working, then it's not authentic. And if it's not authentic, then yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you, I think Headless wanted to ask you something about tarot earlier, but before we get into tarot, I wanted to ask, I guess, for you, um, again, kind of going back to the left-hand path, and now we're going to kind of go forward into your book. What is
Mhm,
left-hand path tarot mean to you?
mhm.
How is that
Um,
different type of tarot?
mhm. It's going beyond what's in the little white book, and
Not surprised.
what has what has been written so far in so many books about tarot. Some of them are like really like have become like foundational and with good reason. But there is something else to be said about tarot as a left-hand path practitioner, because as I mentioned earlier, there comes a point where you realize that you're using binaries to explain some of the messages of the cards, and maybe at the time that the cards were first conceptualized and then like recreated throughout the ages, to better fit like the perspective of the times, the cards start falling short. It kind of like it starts the same messages in that way kind of like become stale. There are some things that maybe you can do a Celtic cross spread for, but there are some others where it's like, well, maybe it would be good, but it kind of like feels contradictory to the purpose of the reading here or the topics of the reading. So how else can we use the cards in order to get the most knowledge from them? And also to turn back, the topic of like agency and free will and, responsibility, like accountability, that sometimes is maybe unwittingly left on the back burner. And on the left hand path, it's like, no, I mean, if we are going to address like this thing, it obviously has some aspects that are not so flattering. It has aspects that can be worrisome. It has other aspects that are like calling the querent out, or calling yourself out if you're reading for yourself. How are you going to just ignore that? Are you going to keep avoiding reading reversals? Are you going to just keep trying to adapt the known and the accepted canonical messages of the archetypes and the majors and the minors, or are you going to add something else that considers the current circumstances, not only of the querent, but also like of the world in general, so it's kind of like that reinterpretation in many cases. And in other times, it's not contradicting the established meanings and the intended messages of the cards and what they represent, but saying, okay, there is that, but there can also be this, and it's very practical and very hands-on, because it always seeks to provide the querent with like tools, not just to say, okay, this is good or bad, or this will happen or this won't happen, but what is your role in this? If you go on a specific direction, if you do this, if you take this attitude, what can you expect to happen? And if you decide not to do that, then what is on the other side of this for you? Or maybe you're asking, oh, what is the way that I can do something in the easiest, like the easiest alternative for me out of a situation? And then maybe on the left-hand path, we would ask, okay, but what is driving you out of this situation in the first place? Do you really like, ultimately we have this, do you want to just sit this one out and or just go through it and find out what happens? So it's always very focused on like giving the querent like agency, but also kind of like presenting them with a very like objective version of where they are standing, and that isn't always reassuring or pretty. So I think that would be kind of like the main difference, and there has also a lot has been said about not using the tarot for superfluous or for materialistic purposes, like for the querent. And here I'm saying, well, why not? If the querent is in like in a tough spot financially, why is it like not so well behaved or seen to use the cards to like give them maybe a practical choice where they can like find, okay, this is what I can capitalize on, and in the best way possible for me. This is how I can best, portray myself or sell my skills. This is how I can like achieve security for me, for my family, for my community. This is the bridge that I need to burn in order for me to, just break free of this or that. Because I think that the tarot has become, like, at least on the mainstream, it's become too conciliatory, or it goes like to the other extreme where it's like that movie that they did recently, the tarot movie, where it's like, okay, the tarot, it's bad, and it's like, okay, the devil, it means that a demon will haunt you, and a lot of these like misunderstandings that happen in pop culture. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of like bringing tarot down from its pedestal of like this mystical, spiritual, pure tool or source, and bringing it down to earth for a little bit, and learning to not be so reverential about it, I guess. So that's basically what makes it, why a book like this needed to exist, in the first place. Because I think we're living again in a time when we need all the insights and all the practical knowledge that we can attain. So if the tarot is only reserved for kind of like spiritual quests, or like just well-meaning and, like, I don't want to say, like, not materialistic goals, then what is left for people? And we need a tarot that works for today, and it's already there. You don't need to create it anew. We just need to learn to read it for these times. Yeah.
It's fascinating because we talked about this yesterday on the very large spaces, where how people will get something like, for example, astrology, in this case tarot, but astrology, whatever, which is supposed to be liberating, supposed to help you, supposed to give you whatever clarity, a way, a path, and something, and then they start creating all those rules to, again, stuck you in a place, like block you in a place, right? Like there's a guy in TikTok, a Brazilian guy, that he makes like memes about tarot, where some people say, oh, you cannot read tarot like laying down or in the water or whatever. Like there's, while you're drinking, you cannot read for yourself. You cannot, like you're saying, get money out of it or whatever. And then he does everything like in the video and showing. So it's he kind of jokes about it. And you're completely right. Like it's a tool, just like others. It doesn't have to be, a divine thing. Oh, you put it on a pedestal and like worship it or whatever. And you can always play with it in different ways. So especially if you're doing it for yourself, right? Like you can find other ways to make it work. The other thing you talked about, how some cards that maybe, or some drawings that maybe look bad, there's always like a way out, or there's always like a thing for you to kind of get to it. When we learned it in the Kabbalah, that's how we do it. So there's always like a key, let's say, for the threshold, where if you do it, then it's fine. It doesn't matter if it's the death, the tower, the devil. It doesn't matter the card, or even the good ones. Apparently, if you don't pay attention, you can also get too much of them, and it's a problem as well. So there's always you gotta balance out what you're doing. So very nice, fascinating stuff.
Cool. Thanks.
Headlands, didn't you want to ask her? Maybe I thought you were going to ask her something on tarot. Not to put you on the spot.
I wanted to know what your favorite tarot was. What's your favorite deck?
My go-to is the Rider Waite Smith one. That's like the one that I learned with, and the one that I use the most. And I know it's not like a very like fascinating answer, but like it's the one that is my ride or die. But my personal favorite, for of course maybe evident reasons, is the Tarot del Toro that Guillermo del Toro participated on with this Spanish engraver, Tomás Hijo, that's his name. And I think that the cards are just stunning. And I really like how they are not like scary or dark, just they have kind of like a brutal severity to them. Like they're kind of stoic in their lines, and how they are very sparse. I mean, they don't use a bunch of imagery or objects within each one of the cards. Everything is like just there, like very succinctly, the elements that need to be there. And it is an actual tarot. It's not an oracle masquerading as a tarot. It's, a tarot deck. And I love to use that when I read for artists and creatives because it lends itself well to the creative and the artistic world. So that would be my short answer there.
One thing that I do know. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna comment. There's even a guy on Instagram, I think like Trevor or something, that he posts like reading tarot for like some Hollywood guys, some luxury brand guys, and whatever. So the top people, they all use those tools, and again, shows how for everyone the message is, oh no, don't mess with this. It's like it's demonic, or it's this and that, or you should use it only in this circumstance and so on. But then for people who actually use it for real, there's nothing like that, right?
Yeah.
One thing I did want to ask, and I do think it might be like kind of inside the book. Do you kind of like look at some cards like the Tower or the Devil? They kind of have like a negative look to them. Do you, supposedly from what I know, you kind of look at it at a different way. You almost reinterpret those cards. Is that something? Would you mind touching maybe on one of them or just explain a little bit?
Yeah, I'll go. I do that, of course, for the very traditionally malign cards, like the ones that you mentioned. But just to give you an example, one thing that I found, and I didn't discover that until shortly before I began writing the book, actually, was if you look at the Chariot, which is not a card that is feared or maligned at all. And it does stand for kind of like, okay, self-agency, having a destination, a goal in mind, determination, and that sort of thing. But when I looked at the illustration that Pamela Smith did there, I was very surprised to find that the chariot itself, if the chariot driver is like sitting within that box there, and you cannot get a sense of someone that is free to move. They look almost like they're in a cage. It reminded me a lot of that reinterpretation that Francis Bacon painted about this portrait of that I think it was Leon the 13th, that Pope. Yeah, exactly. They are boxed in, so they are in a position of power, but at the same time they are imprisoned by it somewhat. So it's like, okay, you're in the driver's seat, but you kind of don't have a choice. You have to go somewhere. And it would seem, okay, well, at least that's empowering and that's all. But, the beasts that are pulling the chariot are not moving. So it's like, I looked at this and I said, well, okay, I know that there are like all these occult and symbolic meanings embedded within this card. But also it's like, it made me think about how we are, especially in this day and age, so obsessed with having a patient we can move forward with. And at the same time, it's like, do we really even know why we need to move? Do we know, is everyone else compelling us to move? Do we even want to move in any given direction? Do we even have that agency, or is it just an illusion of movement? Because not every movement is like a movement forward. Sometimes it's like circular motions. Sometimes it can be backward motions. So it's like it led me to reassess the meaning of the card in a completely different way. And of course, this would have to be interpreted with the current topic or the question that is being dealt with or that you're trying to get answers for. But that was a personal insight that is similar to the ones that you will find on the rest of the book. But this one, even the chariot, which is as I said, a card that nobody usually like fears or thinks of it as like negative, but it's not like all of the positive that it would seem at first, not necessarily. It's it's kind of like an illusion of movement, or like you're maybe only looking at the horizon, but you're not looking at the current circumstances and the context of your surroundings. And that's also a weakness. There's some power, but there's an evident weakness there. So yeah, that's one of the things. It's that kind of reassessment of especially the major arcana. Yeah.
And unfortunately, Cherry, I'm sure you can't hear us again. You may have to leave and come back. Sorry about that. Maybe Ellis, you want to say something?
No, I was just trying to get her attention.
Yeah, right. There we go. You know what? There we go. She caught on this time. Does anybody want to say anything or talk about anything before she comes back? Has any comments?
Well, I do think it's interesting. Sorry, Ellis. If you want to go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say her interpretation on the chariot card is dead on, because usually there's some sort of a separation between the chariot and the wheels, or maybe they're not hooked up to harnesses, the two sphinxes in front of it. So there is a concept of perpetual stuckness when it comes to the chariot card as well.
Yeah, I did find that interesting, the way you looked at that, Cherry. It makes me wonder, like in the Toth deck, it does look like the chariot might be going somewhere the wheels fell off or something. So I wonder if there's even a totally different aspect of that card being shown there. Very interesting that you put that. And, I think even Mario from Symbolic Studies, I think when he came on, he did specify how like the dude is kind of like standing there and he's not sitting down like most cards show. And he is kind of like in that box.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting to look at it like that.
Yeah.
The charioteer in the heavens as well, Auriga, he's supposed to have serpents for legs. You just can't see them. So it's really interesting. There's this immobility that's sort of intrinsic in all these different chariot symbols.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that because it's not like such a feared card, people don't look as closely at it as maybe they could, but yeah, that's one aspect that I was really like fascinated by just prior to writing the book and during the process of writing the book.
Jin, was there something that you wanted to say?
Well, it was just temporarily while Cherry was reconnecting, but I did also thought the Cherry problem, we'll call it, it's kind of a path working problem, you could say, because it is obviously out of motion. And in Hebrew Kabbalah, it actually requires the Vav and the Zayin, so the Hierophant and the lovers. So, but you can also understand this as meaning the sword and the unification, sort of the reins that bring all things into synthesis, which is obviously the wheel, which helps the chariot then move down the paths to Gevra so it can actually take formation at Tiferet. So anyways, I'm sorry, just a little Tarot Kabbalah. I'm still learning. I'm very new to Tarot Kabbalah. This is like brand new for me. So I'm working through it, but I do think that there's something interesting on that at face value.
Thank you.
Can he read for us on 777?
Yeah,
We're always getting stuck on the Hebrew letters and all the rest of that stuff. Man.
One thing I did want to ask, with your book, like what's I guess like maybe if there's something that you want to say that makes it stand out. Maybe because it also is a left-hand pathway of looking at tarot, but like what is it that you, I guess, would like to leave the listeners with about what's different with your book? Why did you put this out?
Well, I think that this is a book that is necessary right now, even if you are not on like a practitioner from the left-hand path. Why? Because there are a lot of perspectives that are consistently, to this day, set aside, or like even people are not even aware of that when reading tarot or when studying tarot. there are some concepts that were like incredibly beneficial for like centuries that now have fallen short. So I think that if anything, I mean, in my book, I don't intend for it to delete any like previous theory of the tarot. That would be like stupid. But I would like, I did intend for the book to make people question how, if they are tarot practitioners, how they read for themselves and for others, and how maybe their perspectives could use a little like broadening. And maybe also, you know, for it to be to stop being so gate kept, maybe not like the trend lately is to like let people have more access to everything and not like keep things away from them. But even so, when you go into, you know, these tarot forums or read other books about tarot and find content on social media, that you still notice that maybe they don't gatekeep like in their discourse, but it's implicit, you know, on the meanings that people are like finding in the tarot or portraying there. The easiest example is like these feminine and masculine aspects that many people still refer to them like in a very narrow traditional sense that hasn't like carried on for centuries. But right now we are like, okay, I mean, the feminine, what does that mean? The masculine, what does this mean? Um, and it's maybe like concerns that might be dismissed easily and just say, oh, this just means this or that. But I think that language is important. You know, that's why they're called, you know, in witchcraft, we call them spells. You know, language is important. So I think that the left hand path of tarot really zeroes in on that aspect, you know, of meaning, symbols, language, and how through that, when you are reading for yourself or for others, you are kind of like co-creating a new reality for them, even if that's not your intention, you know. But that aspect of any tarot practice, I do think is a lot more powerful and maybe should be more revered than any of the other aspects, you know, because ultimately you are co-creating as you speak these meanings in order for them to make sense for you and for your querent. So I think that the left-hand path of tarot really zeroes in on that, and that's what I try to do, you know, and that's what ultimately I would love for this book to be, you know, maybe like a mini revolution, if you will, in how people read tarot, whether they're on the left-hand path or on whichever path they are.
Thank you. I love that. Did anybody want to say anything or ask anything? I do have one other question that was like from earlier that I wanted to ask before I let it go.
Yeah, I may say one thing and then I'll head out. I think it's very important what you mentioned, the way that you are basically helping the person that you're reading tarot to manifest that reality. You're basically, if you don't pay attention, you're almost sentencing them to that reality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot of responsibility even to understand what you're going to say, you know, and how you're going to say it, and to really understand what the cards can mean and so on. Because like you were saying, if you just take the book definition, then yes, some cards will seem like, oh, everything is going to go bad. But, well, do they? In what context? And what it helps a lot is, depending on how we do it. For example, I like to associate the Kabbalah and astrology to it. And once there was a guy making a question about his ex. And then in this case, it wasn't even about astrology or whatever, the connection. But when I mentioned the name of the character in the card, it was like the mythic deck, so it was all Greek characters. The name of the like the woman in the card was the same name as his ex. So then it was clear to me that, okay, so we're talking about her. Yeah, sure. Like, doesn't matter whatever this card is talking about. It's not necessarily going to be
Yeah.
as irrelevant as, you know, it being really his ex's one. So there's a lot of cool little things you can do. The more you grab information about the deck you're using, or how you're using it, and that's why I think then it's going to be super important in your book, like what you're talking about. I'm definitely want to take a look when it's out, or if it's already out, then I'll check it out. But yeah, thanks a lot, Cherry. It was amazing. Also, cool seeing you all. I'll have to head out. As always, you can find me as @MatMora19 on all socials, or my website, Kaabalah.com. That's KAABALAH.com. Thanks, guys. See ya.
No, thank you. Thank you. And we lost Cherry again, unfortunately. Let's see if we can get her to leave, and then there we go. She left. Then when she comes back, I'll ask her that one more question. We'll let her go. But yeah, Judith, do you have any questions for her? You wanted to say anything? Not to put you on the spot.
No, well, a lot of the questions I had, you already asked, but yeah, a lot of them I had originally. I really want to read the book because it is an aspect that most people don't take on the tarot altogether.
Oh, that's what I thought too, which is why I was like, yeah, I definitely want to get this on. It sounds a little different, different of a topic.
Makes me very happy.
Jen or Headless, did you have anything else you wanted to say or ask before I kind of like ask this question and start to wrap it up?
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Headless. So Cherry, I wondered, because this is a common practice for like urban curanderismo or urban brujeria, is the sort of discernment of guides or spirit helpers, or how do you do that service, first of all, and how do you navigate that being left-hand path, is what my question.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I quite understand. Could you maybe rephrase the question a little
Sure.
bit?
So if people come to you and you maybe, I don't know how it works particularly, but if the cards perhaps suggest to you intuit from them that this person has spiritual forces that are helping guide them. And I know other like curanderos or whatever, brujos or whatever it is, they or hechizeros, whatever, they all have different ways to sort of like look at their maybe particular pantheons and say, oh, like I know there's a common practice even for Métis people in Canada, is to like do like saint divination lots. So they'll like put a bunch of saint names in a hat, and then they'll do like a little prayer and then pick a name, and then that's the saint for the person. And so I'm just wondering, like, how do you do that? And then how do you sort of understand, because you have a very broad perspective in cosmological terms, like you're not fixed in one particular worldview. So how do you or do you do that? And then how do you navigate that?
Okay. Well, thank you for rephrasing that. I don't read tarot like that. I mean, there are two aspects of my practice. One is, reading tarot for others, and the other is kind of like shadow work. And the aspects of spell work or ritual work are like extremely closed. I will maybe only do them once or twice a year, and with people that are very specific to me, as far as I have known them for a long time. They are repeat clients. They're friends or friends of friends who heard of me that way. So when I always, before accepting or when at the time when they book a tarot session, I will ask, what are the topics that you want us to tackle? And usually, if it's like a first time querent and they start asking me about, they mention, some kind of spiritual discomfort they are going through, or they refer to, certain familiars or like spirits or things that they work with, I usually don't. For me, that's kind of like going on a deeper level with the person, and I won't do that with someone that I don't know for like very personal reasons based on experience. So I'm not saying that what you're referring to doesn't happen or that it's wrong. I mean, people do have that kind of practice, but I am very much against, when you book a reading with me. It's a tarot reading about this and this and this topic that you want to discuss, that you need guidance from the cards. But there is no like additional spiritual connection between you and me aside from the act of reading the tarot for you. So I don't like to like mix these other types of influences with the reading necessarily. I'm not saying that I wouldn't ever do it, because there may come a time when someone that I know needs to do that, and I will do it, but it requires, I think, a different type of setting. And then the tarot reading becomes like one element of the whole working, not just like the focus of it. So I do not like start, for example, a reading like asking permission to spirits or whatever. I usually don't. I just like kind of like center myself in the time and place, and we do, this reading, and we pull the cards and we discuss that. But the other elements that you mentioned would kind of like correspond to a different type of practice from the one that I have.
I appreciate that, Cherry, very much, because I take a anti-supernaturalist approach. That doesn't mean I don't obviously believe in spirits. I think it's more pragmatic, as you're saying, and I think that tarot is like a very material service. Like if you're going to offer a service, I don't offer any services myself. I don't want to, but for me, I think that that makes a lot of sense for like the way that you're going about it. So I'll just say that. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
The one question I did want to ask, it was a little bit earlier when you were talking about like Santa Muerte, but then like you started to flow like kind of towards tarot, and I didn't want to take it off the course. But do you think Santa Muerte like kind of represents a bridge between the pre-Christian belief system of like the indigenous to the now colonial Christian belief? Any influence?
No,
Or
I don't see it as that. Nope.
Just wanted to know from your perspective. You seem to know a lot about this stuff, so I was just asking.
We should have a show about that. A whole show about Santa Muerte would be awesome.
Because it deserves. I think it deserves like its own space, and it would be a very like interesting and fruitful discussion. So if you ever do one of those, let me know.
No, definitely. We'll be getting you back on in a few weeks for that, if you don't mind, or something like that, for sure. Because that is a topic I'd really like to cover in depth on the show. I don't know anything. Thank you again.
I know a little bit.
Yeah, I think you probably did actually. Did anybody want to say anything before we wrap this up? Anybody's got anything to add? All right, so Headless, why don't you just plug your show and let everybody know? Let them know this time all these endeavors you got going on.
All right, so you've got my my mailbag show on Thursdays. We had a great email this time, so that was fantastic. Thank you. Keep them coming. Just send it to headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. If you're esoteric or magical story, send it to us. So let's see. Also, tomorrow I've got the trilogues with Ethan and Ricardo. We've got Alchemy Mondays with Eros. She's up in the chat right there. And then I've got 777 Tuesdays with Nick. And Jen, you are welcome anytime to read that book, because
it's a tongue twister.
Suck at reading Hebrew.
Oh God.
I'm horrible at Hebrew. For the record, everyone knows that I am not good at it. I butcher it every single time. It is not one of my languages. I am not ethnically that, so I'll just say that. But thank you, Headless, for extending that invitation to me.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Whenever it gets to those words, we'll just let him take over.
Yeah.
Thanks. And Jen, let everybody know what's up with you, man. Please.
Sure. Thank you so much, boss. Appreciate it. This was a great show. A little technical problems, but it's a Shawnee day. It's Saturn, right? And the dragon loves to pretend he is Shawnee. So we'll call it that. A little interference on the Aether wave. And thank you so much, Sherry. Basically just check me out, Threshold Saints, or at the Grey Lodge, the True Grey Lodge with a V.com, or at thresholdsaints.substack.com, or on Spotify and Apple, or on IG and X Twitter. So pretty much I'm dropping my episode with Joe Nally tomorrow, and I hope everybody has a great weekend, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Thank you. And Judith, the loon. Last but not least, please.
Thank you for having me here. Sherry, it was very enlightening to hear your aspect. I can't wait to read your book. I may have some questions for you after I read it. So I'm looking forward to that. And you can catch me on the Loon uh, every Sunday with the weekly brunch. And it's just some self awareness classes.
Definitely check it out. Definitely. And thank you very much for coming on again, Judith. Appreciate it for sure. And Sherry, please let everybody know everything again. Plug the sites, the book, your social media.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you can find me on Instagram at cherryred_tarot. And I also have like links there to my website and my Patreon. My book comes out on February 2nd officially. It can be pre-ordered now through like most bookstores, through Amazon. If you still shop from Amazon, please. And also from directly from Wiser. And I think it's going to be also available on digital, so that's really cool. And let me know. I mean, if you or anyone you know would like to like have me on the show or something, that would be great. Or for like advanced digital copies, that would also be like doable. I can hook you up with that, I think. And but yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was like so much fun. And mostly, I really love to connect with others in the occult community. I don't do that often. I haven't done that for a while. And it was just such a great atmosphere. And you guys have something great going on here. So I really appreciated being part of it for today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
You're a
you.
plethora of information. And again, we definitely have to get you on. We had great talks, and I thoroughly enjoyed the show. It was very enlightening for myself, and I think you helped give the listeners a good idea about what you do in the left-hand path. So I appreciate that. Thank you, all the listeners. That's what's up. I appreciate everybody in the chat. That's where we go live. There was some great stuff in there, and I appreciate that as well. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well.